Hello, and welcome back to Introduction to Operating Systems and Virtualization. My name is Scott Neal. Today we are going to be looking at adding additional devices to your virtual machines. We're going to be doing a brief demonstration today showing you how to configure and optimize some devices you may not be thinking about on a routine basis when it comes to virtualization. Before we do that, we are going to look at virtual machine tools once again. Just kind of a recap, since it is talking about devices and they do offer some functionality. So without further ado, let's look at virtual machine tools. You probably already know by now that you can enhance the performance of virtual machines on your host environment by adding additional utilities. Doesn't really matter what vendor you're using, but you can add additional utilities to enhance that and optimize the way VMs run in your environment. For VMware, the utility of choice is the virtual machine toolset that comes from VMware itself. This toolset really is deployed as a three-part toolset, and if you're going to be installing that in Windows, you're going to be looking for the vmtool ssd.exe file. If you're going to be installing in Linux, the installation file is going to be the vmtool.sd. But either way, it's going to provide a significant amount of functionality to your virtual machines. What kind of functionality? I'm glad you asked. Well, we are going to see things like enhanced hypervisor performance. You're going to see improved cursor handling, particularly in Windows environments. If you're looking to figure out a way to monitor your virtual machines, you're probably going to need some sort of heartbeat utility, and the virtual machine tools are going to provide that for you. Additionally, you can have time synchronization between the guests and the host. You are able to add additional support for, say, SCSI devices, SVGA, networking, a whole host of additional support. And if you're looking to do automatic backups or you need shared folder access, you can install the virtual machine tools. Last but not least, and probably one of the coolest functions available through virtual machine tools is the ability to do text copying between the hosts and the guests itself. Other vendors do provide similar functionality. For instance, in VirtualBox, the tool set of choice is Guest Additions. Guest Additions does very similar tasks as utilities in VMware. So if you're looking to improve your mouse or integrate a printer into your virtual machine, or you're looking to do time synchronization or share folder access, if you're looking for that similar clipboard capability between the guests and the host system that you can find in VMware, rest assured that Guest Additions will do that for you. By the way, Hyper-V, Citrix XenServer, and pretty much any other virtualization vendor out there does have similar add-on utilities to provide these types of enhancements. I do want to point out, however, that if you are running in Linux and you're getting ready to install, say, VMware Tools, you need to be very careful and read up on it before you do it, because a lot of times these installations can be tricky. Why? Because these installations do have dependencies that have to be addressed. Other programs or utilities that need to be installed in your Linux environment that may not be there by default, and that's going to require you to install additional packages over and above the install package for your toolset. So this can become quite difficult. If you're not used to installing packages in your Linux environment, be sure to read up on it and make sure you understand the directions thoroughly before you attempt it. So, of course, hypervisors are responsible for regulating how and which virtual machines can access the physical devices on the host. And devices can be added and removed by the user at will, pretty much. So this is great for testing. It's great for optimizing if you're moving, say, a VM from one host to another for another user, or you're going to be cloning a bunch of hosts, but they're going on a wide variety of different types of machines that are going to require some configuration settings to run in physical environments. That's one of the great things about virtualization. And though virtual machines are rarely used to run their own monitor support, we can do that. So, for instance, if I'm going to be doing a virtual desktop, I may want to go into the settings for that VM. I may want to configure the settings specifically for the host devices, and then I'm probably going to go in and actually set up the monitors as well. Maybe I've got multiple monitors for that user. So I have the ability to go in just like I can on the host system and set up multiple monitor support if that need arises. Unlike their physical counterparts, however, one of the great things about virtual machines is that I can still offer legacy support to older devices. So if you got a device that requires a parallel or serial port, having a hard time finding those ports on newer physical devices, don't worry. If you virtualize your operating system, you can then use your legacy support for virtual machines to run those devices themselves. DVD drives and floppy disks, of course, are supported in virtualization. DVD drives are probably the most configured devices on the virtual machines. And there's two reasons for that. Not only do they offer the physical DVD drive access to your host to run CDs and DVDs, but it's also the primary method of connecting to ISOs or other image files stored on the host or share folder. And of course, we use those image files to what? Build operating systems. So this is how, particularly in my classes, we usually use image files, and our students will connect to the image files, and then they can build the operating systems of their choice. Additionally, that functionality can be provided through the setup utility for the floppy drives. Floppy drives are more often than not used as legacy support these days. It's really hard to find a physical box with a floppy drive. But if you have one, great. If not, you can go out and buy a removable floppy drive. Typically, it's USB plug-in, and when you have it, you can then set up and run floppy drives just like you had an old floppy drive in the device. File extension for virtual floppies are .flp. Another great thing, like I said before, is that I can use that to point to an image file. So even if I don't have a floppy drive on the box, you're going to get, of course, a notice saying, well, we don't have a floppy drive. Do you want me to do away with this functionality? You may want to keep that functionality. Maybe you want to point to an image file there from that floppy drive utility. That's fine. So what else can I virtualize? Well, sound cards. We don't normally think about sound cards, particularly as network administrators. We don't really think about sound cards as something we want to configure for virtualization. They tend to clutter up server VMs. But maybe you're running a virtual desktop. Maybe you're running web applications that require sound. Well, then we may need to install sound cards. And that's fine. We can do that too through the virtualization settings on our VMs. So virtual machines are going to, of course, use the sound card that's installed on the host system, so you don't have a lot of choices for configuration there. But once you set it up, it should play normally just like in a sound card on the host system. Of course, predominantly, if you're hooking up a device onto your VM, more often than not, you're doing it through a USB port. It is the primary method of connecting devices. It's a great way of providing an avenue for all types of devices and peripherals, and I can choose whether that virtual machine, in VMware, whenever you plug up a USB device, like a flash drive or something, you have a choice. You can choose whether the virtual machine is going to automatically attempt to connect to that USB device that you've inserted, or you can turn that feature off. We'll try to show you that in the demo today. Once I've disconnected that USB device, then the hypervisor is going to return control of the USB device back to the host. Alright, so what have we learned today? Well, it's been a pretty quick chapter. VMware hypervisors can support a wide variety of physical components, just like their host systems. Particularly when we use optimization utilities such as VMWare Tools or guest editions. These optimization utilities are going to give you a wide array of functionality. Some of these functionality tools are really cool, like being able to use clipboard and actually move things from the host and the guests through share folders and that kind of thing. So don't discount using the optimization utilities that come from your vendors. And of course, if you're looking to support legacy devices, what better way to support legacy devices than through virtual machines? Okay, so let's move on to the demo. Okay, so here I am. I am now in my VMware workstation. I'm actually in Workstation 12 Player, and I'm going to go to the Settings menu here. So if I go to Manage Virtual Machine Settings, this is where we can add and remove devices. And this, you're saying to yourself, well, this is a repeat of an earlier lesson. And I guess to some degree you are correct. But I do want to focus a little bit on some devices that we may not have touched on in a whole lot of detail before. So if we go down the list, we can start with the DVD-ROM. The DVD-ROM does allow us the ability not only to use a physical device, as we have chosen here, and then we can select that physical device from our list of DVD-ROMs that we may have on our host, but we can also use an ISO image file. And I can simply browse to an ISO image file and then select it here, and then I know that when the box restarts that it will attempt to connect to that DVD-ROM and launch that image file. This is how we build most operating systems on our virtual machines. As far as floppy drives go, you may see right here, I've clicked on floppy, it says, hey, you don't have a floppy drive. This is essentially what this says. Do you want to keep this setting anyway? I'm going to say yes. Primarily because I want to show you the options that are available here. So I do have the ability to use a physical drive. Obviously I don't have a physical drive on my machine, otherwise it would show up here. But I can use this floppy image file, and this is really cool because I can even create an image file. So this is a lot of functionality, and we can use it very similarly to the way we would use a DVD-ROM. What else can we change? Well, we did talk about USB controllers. This is where we can check or uncheck that automatically connect to new USB devices. So maybe this is an annoyance for you. Maybe you have a virtual machine that is running in the background providing some sort of a service, but you're using your desktop very similarly as you would normally use a desktop, and you may be installing or using flash drives from time to time, and you're tired of having it try to connect to those. Well, if I uncheck this box here, then I don't have to worry about the USB trying to be detected all the time through the virtual machine and trying to connect to these USB devices. I do have the ability to show all the USB input devices as well as share Bluetooth devices with the virtual machine. All of those options are available here. And if I need to, I can also go back. This does support USB, but maybe I want to support USB 2 or only USB 1 devices. I have that ability here. Sound cards can be configured here in the sound card settings. The default host sound card, of course, by default is checked, but I can also specify an additional sound card if I have more than one type of sound card utility on my device. I can choose to connect it power on or connect manually as I see fit. So, printers. I don't have a printer connected to my machine. If I did, I could go into the printer here and I could select or choose my printers. I do have to have the virtual printers installed and enabled in the preferences menu. And last but not least, my displays. This is using the host settings for the monitors, but as you can see, I can choose and specify monitor settings. And I do have 2 monitors on this machine, though you don't know it. And I can select 2 monitors and actually run this and show on 2 monitors here. You need to remember, however, that manually specifying the number and size of the monitors may prevent that utility and full screen modes from working correctly. So give it a couple tests, see if it's going to set up and run the way you want it to run. Alright, well, pretty brief demonstration. We'll cancel out of this. But hopefully that will give you some idea and give you some thoughts about, what kind of devices you may want to configure to run in your virtual environments. Until next time, have a great day.